Okay, we're on the third day of questioning of Peter Francis. We've just come to the lunch break. We've had two restriction orders brought in, two breaches just in the last 10 minutes or so, just towards the end. So we've gone for a slightly early lunch. We've been listening to the live questioning of Peter Francis, the undercover police officer who infiltrated anti-racist and family justice campaigns in militant labour between 93 and 97. He went whistleblower in 2010, so his evidence is quite unique. I'm joined by Wilson from Police Spies Out of Lives. What have you made of what we've been hearing from Peter Francis?
It's very interesting evidence. It's quite different, and I think people have said that before. It's quite different from some of the other ex-SDS officers that we've heard. It's also ranging around quite a lot. There's a lot of different topics, so it's quite difficult. I mean, there's a few things that have kind of stuck in my head from stuff that he said, but it's hard to find a kind of overarching theme. It's not like some of the other officers we've seen. You get like a kind of topic by topic with a chronological going through their reports, and this has jumped around. So we've had like quite specific stuff about actions, and I think we've heard some stuff about Welling, and then like much more kind of high level stuff about who was doing the tasking and where it was coming from. There was one of the things that really jumped out to me was before the break, and I don't actually know if you discussed it in your other video, but was this question of the revolutionary potential of militant labour.
Yes, we didn't.
So he was asked about the revolutionary potential and said, and there was a bit of giggling. I certainly laughed in the public gallery when he said, "Well, no, they would not."
Bit harsh is what he says. Bit harsh to say that they weren't.
To say it, and he kind of apologised to those of us who are still activists. But I think many of us would agree that our potential to bring about revolution, we've never been close to toppling the state at any point in my activist career, certainly in this country. But what I thought was interesting about that was Barr's next question was, well, when did you realise? And you could kind of see him almost backpedaling, because of course, if he goes into militant labour and realises that their subversive potential is next to zero, the justification for his deployment goes out the window. And his answers were, well, obviously by the end of my deployment, I'd worked that out, implying that he kind of needed to be there for all that time in order to reach that conclusion.
It did take him he did say yesterday, it took him 3 months to realise the Revolutionary Interventionist League of 10 people. It took him 3 months to realise they didn't have any revolutionary potential.
But I think what was interesting, and a lot of listening to his evidence, there's a lot of what I'm thinking is about the psychology of it all, because I think that the psychology of the position of whistleblower is really interesting. He's coming from what we've already established is a bubble. It's an unaccountable, exceptionalist bubble, and he's in that bubble. And one of the things that he said in answer to, when did you realise, was, well, nobody from Special Branch ever actually asked me what their revolutionary potential was. And I wasn't about to go against the Special Branch line that this was important.
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned that there were thousands of files on thousands of subversives in Special Branch. He didn't really want to be the one who said the Special Branch was wrong about how many subversives
exactly.
there were.
And I think that's quite important. I mean, obviously he doesn't want to be the one who says that they're wrong, because it would put him out of the job. And probably, given the way that Special Branch operated and how many other people's jobs relied on this, probably wouldn't actually have had that much impact if he'd turned around and said, well, no, the revolutionary potential is zero. Somebody in their wisdom would probably have gone, well, he's not getting the goods, let's get him out and put someone in who is going to find the revolutionary potential. I think that it was quite an interesting insight into how that worked. I mean, another part of the fascinating psychology of this is every time it touches on it appears that Francis went through some quite violent incidents. It sounds like he himself was quite violent during those incidents. And I think that the experience of going through that, and probably the camaraderie around it. So there was one individual who he described as extremely violent. He kind of said if Special Branch had a very violent category, then this man would have been in it. and then kind of immediately said, I mean, you know, no disrespect, he was a good fighter. And that was that kind of weird split that I guess, you know, in the context of going through, you know, beating people up or being beaten up or just being scared or being in those situations, these are the people who have your back. The cops don't have your back. The cops going to beat shit out of you. You know, the FASH don't have your back, even though, like, they are the people that your colleagues at work are essentially supporting. So there's got to be this really weird, messed up thing, which, you know, and he says quite openly during his evidence, this is an area that, you know, my memories are messed up. I have flashbacks about. I don't really know how to.
I mean, it is like the whole thing about his memory about violent incidents. He can't recall the specifics, but he's very sure that people are violent. And in some cases, I mean, we talked about it in the last video, but when he talks about people like Paul Heron being violent, I'm afraid he loses a bit of credibility on that.
He does a bit, yeah.
And like more than a bit, you know. And I mean, at times like that, and particularly his use of language, like you just talked about, oh, no disrespect, he was a good fighter. He just reminds me of like that bloke at the bar, like the old fella at the bar was talking about, oh, those lads can look after themselves. Oh, well, you know, a bit tasty, and all this kind of sort of stuff.
Yeah, and there's obviously also an element of pride in his own ability to hold his own in a fight. It all, you get into those topics and immediately the evidence starts to feel quite garbled and messed up. Yeah, but then, as I said, we also have this kind of quite high level stuff. So we've seen documents displayed that quite a lot of people went, oh, that's an odd one. I've never seen an intelligence report like that. And Francis himself said, oh, that's an unusual one. I've not seen that. And we saw a completely redacted document with some gists on it that basically said this was the security services commentary on the intelligence. So it was MI5, and in this instance saying, yes, this is good intelligence and it's valuable intelligence. This is what we want. And we also saw right towards the end, and this is we were a bit delayed starting this video because I wanted to check that I wasn't going to get thrown in Facebook jail for saying this, but I
think it's actual jail.
Actual jail, yeah, sorry, actual jail, yes. That Francis was getting tasking from the Home Office to report on people's immigration status, and specifically we were hearing talking about, you know, somebody's marriage being a marriage of convenience, you know, and the possibility of deportation. And so there's now this question mark over, well, you know, what on earth was the STS's role in considering people's immigration applications, and why, you know, just more questions about the role of the Home Office, essentially, that why are, and they need to be asked these questions, and they need to come forward and answer them. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they're very serious. I mean, hopefully we'll go back to that more after lunch, because I mean, that area was just being opened up, shut down twice over breaches. So I mean, it'd be interesting to see how they tackle it, but it does need to be looked into more. When we came into the start of this session after the last break, and the first thing that was talked about was this summer camp in Germany.
Yes.
And one of the things that was very striking was a lot had been said about the fact that in his report he referred to anarchist black bloc from Berlin carrying assault rifles, including firearms, including assault rifles, to guard the camp.
Yes.
This was put to him, is this true? And he said, oh, yes. Did you witness it? Oh, no, not at all.
Yes. I mean, this is something, having been anarchist black bloc from Berlin, I've found this quite amusing.
But also utterly ridiculous.
Totally ridiculous. Yeah. And what I actually think, like, I can try to visualize those kind of camps, and I've been there myself. I think he saw a sticker. It was quite common to have stickers with AK-47s on them. Yeah. You know, like they were. There was a lot of slightly ludicrous aesthetic which came out of the Red Army faction in the 1970s, and you know, was very much. I mean, we used to refer to it as liposoli punk, which translates roughly to, I don't know if you know those kind of poster, like government assigned places where you can stick fly posters.
Oh, right, yeah.
And so they're always like completely covered in posters. They're called liposoli. So it's like the punks who are covered in the patches and the
right.
And I think I genuinely think that, you know, he was there and maybe like going totally out of his mind, because he was talking about how, you know, it was, on the one hand, it was great fun and it was a summer camp in the woods. And on the other hand, if something went wrong, he thought he was going to die. Like, I can imagine that in his own head, all kinds of mad stuff must have been happening. And I'm thinking about the aesthetics of those places, and I'm sure that there probably were stickers with AK-47s on them. I doubt very much there were any real AK-47s.
I think we clear that there definitely wasn't. I mean, like, he says he never saw, and nobody he was with ever saw them. And he says even the baseball bats that he says that he was given to do the security, that other members of his group wouldn't have necessarily seen these baseball bats. Which,
no,
you know,
and if there had been, they may well have been to play baseball
as
well, because they do have other uses.
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, anybody who's been anywhere near one of those spaces will just know that it's nonsense. But again, that brings me to like what is going on in his head, because, you know, he must know that making an assertion like that is going to open him up to quite a lot of questions. And, you know, does he really believe that there were AK-47s there somewhere in the darkness, and that if he'd got caught, he'd have been taken out into the woods?
I mean, to me, it makes a suggestion that, like, his managers would have liked there to have been. So if he could suggest that there was in his reports, that was going to be viewed favourably. So, you know, like, he was looking all the time for something that could be like that. And as soon as he got a sniff of it, he was like, I'll put that in. And that, you know, everything was about like exaggerating the risk, perceived risk seemed to be a huge part of what they were doing.
Yeah. Another thing that I found quite interesting was, again, jumping to topic, but this is just totally how the evidence was this afternoon. Is him this morning? God, is it still morning? Oh my God! They're talking about running late today and tomorrow in order to not have to sit on Friday. Anyway, was his he was elected as branch secretary of, I don't know if it was Militant Labour.
It was Youth Against Racism in Europe, but it was because he had become a member of Militant Labour, so he was the Militant Labour endorsed candidate.
Right.
So actually, there was nobody who ran against him to be branch secretary, but to be executive delegate for the London branch, he beat the Revolutionary Interventionist League candidate to win that. He said he hadn't realised that he was interfering with the democratic process.
That's what I was thought. So he was like, well, you know, this was fantastic. I was endorsed by Militant Labour. I was no one was ever going to question my status. I was no longer at risk. Like, and you know, Barr was like, well, did you consider that this was an interference in the democratic process? It never crossed his mind.
Till now,
like it was like having that question.
15 years into being a whistleblower, he hadn't considered it.
And I think that's also really key, because I think the interference in our right to organise and the impact of that on democracy in this country, you know, the idea that the police are unconcernedly, unconsciously and completely uncritically interfering with the democratic right to organise inside these groups, to the point of, you know, rigging the elections essentially, and getting people who are in no way genuine members of that organisation into positions of power. It's one of the most serious things about this inquiry, and I think it just gets brushed over and over again, because the SDS didn't think it was a big deal. So I do think we need to keep hammering home, you know, actually the right to organise politically is absolutely fundamental to a healthy and functioning democracy, and the fact that the police uncritically think that anything about their operations could possibly be more important than that, and just override that. And, you know, there were no AK-47s. There never were any AK-47s. Like, there is simply no justification for that level of interference.
One of the things that really struck out to me was the HN43's interview with Operation Hearn, where he talked about his time after he'd left the branch. He had some role earlier on, but he'd come back to the branch in '95 and found the public order desk he was now working on had changed considerably. And one of the big changes was now desk officers were allowed to directly talk to SDS officers. And Peter Francis said, oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Yes, that what would happen was that a delegation from the public order desk would come to the safe house and question the SDS officers on specifics. Now, HN43 was working on a number of topics. He said that there was a lot of mixture of what you could have worked on, but one of the streams that he was responsible for was deaths in custody. And that he would come in and ask very direct questions, specific taskings to undercover officers about deaths in custody and other issues, plenty of other issues. But and Peter Francis, oh yeah, there was a change in Special Branch around this time. I forget the terminology used for it, but the secrecy of the STS really has disappeared by this point.
Yeah. And I think this is really interesting and really important. I mean, I noted that Peter Francis, he wasn't sure who HN43 was at the beginning, but he looked at it and went, oh, this is a surprisingly honest special branch officer. Like, he really, and I think this witness statement, I'd not seen it before today. I think it's an important one. And this is something that, when it comes to the managers, and particularly around the issue of sexual relationships, we're going to need to look into with a lot more detail, is what did they know? I mean, in the Investigatory Powers Tribunal, we were pushing the fact that people must have known that Mark Kennedy was a cop. So, I mean, in this case, we're talking about Pete Francis. He is the elected branch representative of Youth Against Racism in Europe, backed by militant Labour. We know, and this is something that the inquiry is very unwilling to go into, but we know that there were also informants being paid, real people who, for whatever reason, had been persuaded by the police to pass them information. There were also corporate spies, and we've had confirmation by now that there were corporate spies in some of these groups, and they would also have been feeding information back to the police. And the police's line on this has been, yes, but the people receiving that information would not have known that so-and-so is an undercover officer. So even if they're getting the information that they have a girlfriend, they're getting the information, in my case, that Mark Stone had a girlfriend, and they don't know that Mark Stone is an undercover cop. And what we see from this stuff is, once the secrecy is gone, once the desk officers who are getting all that information are meeting with the undercover officers, that is no longer the case. They know, when you see the photographs of those people with their partners, they know that that person is an undercover officer. So I think this question of, the police would very much like the line to be, well, all intelligence was sanitized before onward dissemination. Nobody knew that these people, that was a very closely guarded secret. So even if there was information flying around and photographs taken at gatherings and on demonstrations that would have informed the police that these relationships were taking place, nobody knew. So nobody knew that that person was an undercover officer, so that information would not have made it through. And I think statements like that really undermine that. Once you know that the desk officers are meeting the undercover officers, then that no longer applies. The intelligence flow is going through people who do know that that person is undercover.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly significant. It was one of those things that when you first look at it, you're like, oh yeah, well, oh shit. Yes. Which is the case for a lot of the stuff we get in the inquiry. At first, the actual significance of it isn't necessarily immediately noticeable, but like when you actually start putting it together, what that actually means a lot. Let's see if there's anything from the comments. It's been bad so far. Oh look, someone is yes, support me on Ko-fi. Yes, someone has posted that up. The rest of the things seem to be nonsense.
Russian.
In Russian. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to say about what we heard this morning?
No, I mean, I think I think, as I say, it's jumping around a lot. We've almost certainly missed stuff, but
we almost certainly have. Also, there is stuff that we have heard that we can't talk about,
of course,
which has been the case throughout the inquiry, is particularly bad this week.
Well, I think there's an interesting thing about Peter Francis's evidence, is that he's repeatedly saying, I can't answer that question because it would go into the areas that you have told me I'm not allowed to talk about, and it's very, very clear that he is being hobbled as a witness by the inquiry, which, you don't see so much with the non-whistleblower cops, because they are on side trying to keep those secrets. So anything they've been told they're not allowed to talk about, they're delighted. They don't want to talk about any of it. Whereas Pete Francis really does want to talk about this, and he's being told, you can't go there, you can't go there, you can't go there. And he's marking the inquiry on that. He's making very clear, well, you have told me I can't go there, you have told me I can't go here. And so it really shows up in a way that we maybe haven't seen so much in the past. You get the breaches, but you don't get that sense of how much the witness is holding back and not being able to talk about.
I mean, there have been a few things he's been asked. He goes, I'm allowed to talk about this. I thought this would be restricted as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for joining us. We'll do another reaction video in the afternoon break. Yeah, it will be a late finish today, so it would appear, and a late finish tomorrow as well. They're trying desperately not to sit on Friday, though it may be the case that they're sitting on Friday as well.
We don't want to sit on Friday.
We don't want to sit on Friday.
But we also don't want to stay late today.
No, we don't do any of those things, but also we do want to hear everything that Peter Francis has got to say to the inquiry. I think a lot of the difficulty will come when it comes to Rule 10s, the further questions, and how much of a further questions there are.
I suspect there's going to be a lot.
I suppose there'd be a great deal.
I mean, you know, all of this stuff where we're saying we had no idea this was coming. Wow, like this has just dropped. You know, I think there's conversations going on all over the inquiry along those lines, and stuff that we need to ask.
Yeah, I mean,
questions about.
There is a lot of lawyers here this week. I mean, today, like so many lawyers, they're actually in the public gallery as well because there's not enough space for them in the lawyers area, including some celebrity lawyers. Some of whom rushed out during the hearing to report to their clients because their clients had been mentioned in ways they weren't expecting them to be. So, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot. There's just a lot.
There's just a lot. There's a lot. It's all a lot.
But I mean, there's a few journalists there today. You kind of hope there'll be more coverage of what's happening, though. I mean, I would say the coverage that has happened has been limited to the usual suspects in the Guardian and so forth,
and to a large extent to the usual topics as well.
Yes.
So we're talking about the racism, we're talking about the sexual relationships, but I think there's a lot more very interesting stuff coming out in this evidence.
And just quickly while we're here, I mean, you're going around talking to people about all the other things and your own experiences with your book tour you're currently on. Do you want to plug?
Well, so we will be in Cardiff at the Jomek School of Journalism, Media and Cultural Studies. We'll be in Bristol at Base Community Centre on Saturday, and we will be in Machynlleth, right on the west coast of Machynlleth, sorry, on the west coast of Wales. Call it Mac is the easier way to approach it. With literary cat books at the Wednesday Pizzeria, and next weekend we'll be off as well, talking about stuff from the inquiry, talking about the book, obviously, and so yes, if you're in any of those places, then come along and join us. And I'll do another video with Tom next week to plug next weekend's event.
Yes, yeah. All right, thanks for joining us. We're going to have some lunch, and we'll see you all this afternoon. Bye for now.